Commission. Roll call.
Bob Zirk,
Here.
John Freitag, Bob Kleppel,
Here.
Kevin Creedy,
Here.
Tessie Steffens,
Here.
Sparky Stuckenschneider,
Here.
Jeannie Miller Wood,
Here.
Dave Waymeyer,
Here.
Betty Werner,
Here.
Gavin Woolley,
Here.
Al Bear,
Here.
Jeff Packey.
Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the minutes from our March 12th.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Gavin, second by Tessie. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 14.
I'll keep my report short since we probably have a lot of other project business to deal with here. Probably most of you know or have seen the erosion at the riverfront down by the boat club and boat docks area. There was a large tree that kind of sort of fell off the side of the bank, like sunk. Was getting ready to slough off into the river, but stopped and was leaning towards the trail, and we had to do an emergency removal of that tree yesterday, which was quite expensive. And then we're trying to figure out what to do down there. As some of you know, those of you that are on the tree board, we have a bank stabilization tree plan that we're waiting to get approval from, or not approval from, but guidance from. I have an MDC rep coming out on April, it's either 10th or 17th, to walk the bank with us, to give us a little guidance on the tree selection. And then the city's trying to set up a meeting with the Corps of Engineers to pick their brain about bank stabilization in that area, so. Miller Post Pavilion's almost finished, should be finished this month. The students have been doing a great job, looks really nice up there. Some of you may have seen the slide came in last week, the new green slide at the pool. So has been installed. It's not fully functional or anything yet. They're still working on it, but it is up in the air and looks
Some
like
water to land in would be beneficial.
yeah. Pool company's getting ready to do the de-winterization of the pool. And then one of the things they'll do is the final testing of the slide will be when the water's turned on, to get water running through it and make sure it runs properly. They may. Maybe you two you guys could race down the slides. And then the roof at the main stage is coming along. It's quite large when you're standing. Very impressive when you're standing under it or next to it.
I was told today it's bigger than Riverport.
Really?
I don't know
Wow.
about that, but
Tommy Miller said that, and he's kind of knowledgeable.
He is kind of knowledgeable.
Kind of.
I'll give you that.
I'm gonna second that, Darren. As a cousin, I'll second that.
It might be tall.
Heavy on the word kinda.
Kind of, yeah. Depends on the topic.
But that's it for my report for now.
I mentioned the benches at
Miller Post.
Miller Post.
Yeah, the staff had, we're working with the advisory committee up there. They wanted benches, and we put in some, I guess, natural-looking benches, I guess you'd
About as
say,
natural as they come.
They look awesome.
Yeah, cool.
made out of chunks of wood for like the legs, and then they were,
They look good.
I don't want to say mounted, but they were staked isn't the right word either,
Four by
Fastened.
10.
secured into the ground, so they
Fastened,
are not really movable. And then 4x4s, or I think it was 4x4s, or
Is it a 4x4 or is it one piece like a 4x10, 12?
might be 4x10 or 12. I can't remember. But anyways, we purchased some wood from a local sawmill.
And it's eastern red cedar.
Yeah, to create the seat. And so I have some pictures on would I've been taking pictures of projects to post on social media, but I haven't made it that far yet. But I have the pictures, just haven't posted them yet, so you may see them out there soon. But any other questions about the projects going on in the park? I know Easter egg hunt's this coming weekend, so if you want to volunteer, I'm sure we could use you for 15 minutes at the Easter egg hunt.
12.
Anything else? Communication from the audience?
We're here for your next time.
Okay. Old business?
Trail connection at the park, I'm happy to report that we finally got notice to proceed from the state to start construction on the restroom addition and renovation. So that should be happening, hopefully, starting in the next couple weeks. And we'll try to keep some of those bathroom stalls open while they're doing renovation. They're, depending on what kind of activities we have in the park down there, like Sunset on the Riverfront and things like that, we may have to add some additional porta potties down there during high use times, depending on what's still open in our current restroom. So that's the update. Then in the next fiscal year is the actual trail connection. The next fiscal year starts October 1st. So probably at this rate, the way the state's going, we probably need to start getting all our paperwork into the state now, so it's ready to hopefully go by October 1.
Yep.
So I've talked to Cochran about that. So
Contract been awarded yet on the restroom?
yes,
Monday night.
this past Monday. So yeah, Franklin County Construction.
Let them know about the little event that. Gavin
Oh,
and
yeah.
I and-
Yeah, good point. So last week, Friday, I think it was, staff and Sparky and Gavin, so we had a member of Park Board, member of Tree Board, attended a Tree City USA luncheon at the Lodge at DePere's Rec Center. And we as in the city, received our 20th consecutive Tree City USA Award and a Growth Award, which is our, I think, 8th Growth Award over the last 20 years, our second in a row now, 23 and 24, for going above and beyond the requirements of the Tree City USA. So that's good. We got some new stuff to add to our plaques down in our office, and I know you guys had a good time and
We
good
did.
photo
Thank
opportunity.
you for
Probably-
allowing us to go.
Probably
Very
learned a little bit, yeah. And it's an event where you can invite up to 4 people from your city, and a lot of times it's mayors, councilmen, tree board members, staff, park directors. It's just a whole conglomerate of people that come together for this, and it's municipalities all over the St. Louis region, like all the way down to like Herculaneum is one. We're kind of out, Union and us are out here this way. A lot of St. Louis County
We just happened to be seated with Clayton.
Oh, you did? Did
We
you,
asked about you.
Justin Wolf?
They didn't know you.
Maddie,
Well, their forestry department's under Public Works, not Parks and Recreation, so it wouldn't surprise me, so. Anything else? Did I forget anything else?
No.
Okay.
You're doing great. Parks and Recreation Master Plan Project, prioritization.
All right. I don't really have a set agenda or anything specific. I don't have anything specific to talk about. These gentlemen may, so, or they do, I should say.
Take one down, pass it around.
Thank you. 99 bottles of beer on the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
You get the drill. So we'll pass around, I met with Wayne and Chad yesterday. We had a chance to kind of talk about the long litany of projects that you all were privy to last week or the week before when you had your meeting with the consultant. And we started talking about, what are some, and I'm gonna start this by saying there are a lot of ifs before I get into this handout that I gave you. A lot of assumptions and a lot of ifs, and I'm gonna repeat that at the end, so that anybody else is wanting or whatever later on, they can say, well, you said that we were, no, these are all ifs. So I want to make sure that we start off that way. But we heard some of the comments, that you guys made. Wayne and I have talked. Obviously, we've had some of these projects have already been started to be discussed amongst the city staff before we even get to the point of talking about renewal of the capital improvement sales tax. And as most of you know, that's where the lion's share of funding comes for capital projects, especially for the Parks office. We did hear with some of, but before I get into this list, I did want to go ahead and let you know, we do still have funds that are allocated towards, capital improvement sales tax funds that are allocated towards some projects and primarily for both our public works yard and the parks yard with regards to things to go ahead and help with covering up equipment and stuff like that, things that you've discussed with, and I know that some of you have discussed with Wayne as well. We have these items budgeted or they're left over from other projects. And we have a building and facilities committee that meets every time Wayne and I talk about bringing them together. I mean, they're the ones that make a recommendation, for example, on picking a consultant for the pool house design, as well as moving forward with the contract that you all just talked about with Franklin County Construction for the remodel of the restroom down at the riverfront. And we have 2 council members and mostly staff that sit on there. They also reviewed and went through the process of getting the fire station under review and getting the design and all that stuff and picking a consultant. So the city has a committee that kind of looks at those, and we asked them to go ahead and take a look at these projects before we decide to proceed and go take it in front of the council. There's 2 council members on there. Right now, Mike Coulter and Jeff Padkey are both on that, as well as staff. So on one of our meetings that we got coming up, that we're going to be April 28th, we're going to be meeting again, and at that time, I've asked Wayne to go ahead and we do a little field trip out at the parks, take a look at the what are the needs that are out there at the parks as far as the office area, what would have to be done to remodel that, what are some things that could be done to go ahead and help with getting some of the equipment under roof, whatever we need to go ahead and do, as well as go to the public works yard out there and take a look at there. If you combine what's allocated for both of those areas and what's still left in the capital improvement sales tax now, I'm not talking about if it gets successfully renewed for 2026, I'm talking what's still in the budget for next year, you have approximately 1.6 to 1.7 for both areas to go ahead. Now that could be, depending upon what that committee deems appropriate, you could propose, split it up, or, the lion's share go to one area versus the other. But that's what we have. We have about 900,000 set aside for public works, for some type of structure out there. They have dump trucks that are sitting out, in the thing. We can talk about what's the need of, what's the value of, like I said, preserving those a little bit more with the structure. You also have, Park still has 673,000 left from what we had originally allocated for the city auditorium. As you know, we put the roof on as well as did some tuck pointing. You still have a substantial amount left that's in there. We decided to hold off to see what would happen with this study as we move forward. We all know that we have improvements, and I'll get into that a little bit with my next handout. But total, you have, like I said, about 1.6 to 1.7 that could be spent in either both of those yards or one or the other, or whatever the case may be. So that committee is going to go ahead and take a look at that and kind of come up with a recommendation, and we're going to meet later this month. So I want you to know that those funds are already in your capital improvement sales tax and would be either expended probably in 2026, the last year of the tax. So that's one item I wanted you to know, because I know a lot of you had made comments about wanting to make sure your parks equipment and stuff like that, or made improvements to the parks office, and not only the office, I shouldn't say, what do you want to call it, your parks facility, your shed, whatever.
Maintenance, yeah.
Maintenance area.
Maintenance shop.
So, do I understand you're saying taking the 673 away from the auditorium, applying that to the maintenance shed?
For this, yes, for this term of this capital improvement sales tax, that is an option that you could do, or that the city could do. So, so let's move into this handout that I've passed out. And these, and again, I'm gonna say this again, there's a lot of ifs here. For starters, this is just recommendations of what we see. I think I told you at the meeting, for those of you that were in attendance, if you take the 2.85 that we currently collect on a half-cent sales tax per year, put a 2% increase per year on that, you'll get out about 24.5 to 25 million, assuming that the city wants to go ahead, and when they put it up for renewal, it'd be for an 8-year renewal, just like it has been for the last 3 or 4 terms previous. So that leaves you 25 million to spend over not just parks, but that's also for emergency response services, and I have not gotten a list. You guys have been a little bit more privy to setting up some priorities, because you've had this Parks Master Plan, which actually, the timing of it, I feel, is really good, because you've vetted this with the public, you know exactly what needs to be done, and you all can have a chance to go ahead and agree and talk later about all of those line items that those guys had laid out for you, and see what you feel is higher priority, lower priority, or how they listed them when you got the draft. But with that, the first big if, I will say, is if we would split that in half, so to speak, between emergency response and the Parks Department for improvements on that tax, you would have, as I said the other night, about 12.5 million. Now, I have not received anything from emergency response. They may have a bigger priority or something that would take up more, that you may not have 12.5, or they may have less and you may have a little bit more towards the park side. So just keep that in mind when we're going through this. This is just a draft and some stuff that we feel are suggestions that probably need to be. The biggest ticket item, I will tell you that after reviewing and looking at what the consultant came up with and what we had talked internally a lot about, and I know the council has recently been given a lot of feedback, is on the senior center. And we all know that what our long-term plan was to go ahead and put that in a facility that the city owns. The city doesn't need to lease from anybody, and put it in our facilities. Early discussions were, what do we do with our city auditorium? And how do we go ahead and make that a little bit more of a friendly space? Well, we knew we had to do upgrades, and we've started on those upgrades. But we felt at one point, well, maybe if you had the senior center back out there and you refurbished it, that would be a good repurpose of that building. And it'd also be within your campus. If you've got your pool there, you've got park area, you've got, and you know, the biggest challenge probably would be creating the parking that you would need. And you saw what the consultants kind of came up with preliminary. But in discussing that, we also looked at recently the possibility, because the chamber had brought up the idea of putting a building out on the fairgrounds and seeing what they could go ahead and do with that. Now, when they started talking about the price tag that they were looking at, it was very similar to what we were talking about with the renovations, or what we would do if we expanded at the auditorium. And I think within your consultant gave you a ballpark of like 5 to 7 million. And so, depending upon obviously a lot of ifs of what you wanted to go ahead and add to it. But if we took those funds, and if we decided that we wanted to go ahead and replace the buildings that we've heard from the chamber of what they would do. So for example, if there were I think where the Borgia stand is, and then you got the admin where they have their offices there, and then the Optimist, and if you tore all that down because it's aging and you replace that, you could put a new building out there. I don't think that, you see what our budget is, there's no way that we can support 2 $5 million buildings. I don't think that would be prudent on half of the city. I think a lot of people would agree with that. So what if you picked one or the other, and what if you picked the one that was out there at the fairgrounds and you used it? They would like to go ahead and use, I know at least the fair, or the chamber and the fair would like to see a new administration building out there, and also some opening up there where you have tall enough ceilings where you would have some expo area where they could put in some pieces of equipment during the fair and utilize it during that. Sounds great, but again, as you, some of you have all heard, that's great, but I mean, you're gonna put up this thing up for 5 days out of the year, right? And you hear those comments all the time. So what could we do to go ahead and include that? When I first met with JB and she asked me about, you know, the possibility of that, or we talked about it, I said, the first thing that came to mind was, well, can you put some pickleball courts at least in that thing? So we have those, you know, at least year round, that we can accommodate that popular, you know, use. And so.
Indoor air conditioned.
Air conditioned, heat, the whole gamut. And so, yes, and the idea was that, she said, absolutely. I mean, you could put those in that expo. So then we started talking about, well, what if you put your senior center in there? And that would be available for most of the year. Maybe you could even do it for 11 months out of the year. Maybe all we need is have them out of there for 2 or 3 weeks during the fair, and the rest of the time of the year, that's your senior center. And you accommodate that with the building. And you would have that open space, you'd have the pickleball courts there, they'd be right in the middle of the fairgrounds. So there's some ideas there that we could go ahead and share, but that's the biggest ticket item out of 12.5 million that I would see that the city could possibly go ahead and do. So if you want to do a structure, either in the fairgrounds or you want to do it out at the auditorium, it's going to take up, I would say, if you have 12.5 towards, dedicated towards parks, it's going to take up half of that. So that's your biggest ticket item. The other stuff that we've talked about, obviously, is the soccer association.
Wayne,
Yeah.
Darren?
Yeah.
Would that eliminate HVAC and windows from the current auditorium?
No, I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
So the soccer association have wanted to turf their field, obviously, I think number 3?
One.
I'm sorry, I get the numbers wrong.
I think that's the right.
And I don't know that they could possibly, if you put, and again, these are just suggestions, they're not, but if you put 1.5 million towards that, they could possibly even get maybe 2 fields, if not 1, definitely 1. So that could be possibly reduced, and we could take a look at that. But that's one of the ideas that I know that they want to go ahead and turf the field. Plus, it would make it a lot easier for them to go ahead and maintain. The thing you got to think about is you're going to have to replace that.
Right.
They got a shelf life. They don't last forever. So, I mean, we always got to think about that. Washington Youth Sports Association, they have a lot of improvements that they want to do down there at Lakeview. Got a lot of ideas. They want to move in some of the fences. They want to go ahead and create a new concession stand possibly. I don't know, whatever else I'm missing, Wayne, but we've met with them. It's been a while since I met with Chris Haney and some of the board members, but we have met with them, discussed some of the improvements that they want to do, and just allocating a certain dollar amount for Lakeview and say, here you go. If you want to raise more money beyond this to help with what you want to do, great, but here's some money that you can go ahead and do to do some of the improvements that you want to do. City auditorium, what you asked. So that's, we would look at still putting in an HVAC system for it, as well as, and Wayne's gotten some quotes on what it would take to do a new HVAC system in there, as well as replacement of the windows. We replaced the doors. I don't know if you replaced all the doors or if you'd have
We
some.
did, but it was quite, we should, if we're doing it, we should just do it all so they all match.
So that would be a number that we could throw towards the city auditorium to help it still, because we still want to go ahead and make some improvements to that. I think you need to get more use out of the building, and we're not going to do it until we tackle that, what we have to do. So hopefully that answers the question you were going to have, Kevin.
Yes, that is it. Thank you.
And then another one is the Phoenix Center tennis courts. I know Wayne has approached me and told me there's a lot of problems that we're going to have with the asphalt that was put in when they were put in back in, I don't remember what year they were.
2012.
2012. There is some, he's informed me of post-tension concrete, which is popular now for putting in, I guess, for tennis courts. It's a lot less likely to go ahead and crack or do whatever. That's the latest of what they have that they could last. I don't know what the shelf life of that is, but we could talk about that. But putting $1 million towards that. And then We know that the number I gave you earlier is not gonna solve all the ills of what you need, maybe at your park maintenance yard or shop, but another 1.5 million out of this next one to go towards that, and you could piecemeal those improvements or whatever you needed, whatever priority was next. Some other smaller projects we think you ought to consider is a splash pad someplace on the east side of town. I think your plan had it within the thing, talked about in the Optimist. We've discussed internally a little bit about the lack of use, I guess, for baseball down at McLaughlin Field, because they haven't been using it in the last, I mean, there's practices, I know that they do that. But could you possibly design another use within that park so it's just not sitting there vacant? I know it's a popular place when it snows, but, you know, to do a little bit more than beyond what it has. I think they like everything centered. It takes a lot for them to, I think, man the concession stand, et cetera, when they've got ball games going on. At least that's what you've heard.
I just got an email today from Chris Hani about, I guess they're having some issues at the Lakeview concession stand, a variety of things, and he was already complaining in the email about having to maybe trek over to Barclage Field, which is much closer than McLaughlin Field.
Gotcha. So that, the Barclage was a hike, I guess. then.
Yeah.
So then McLaughlin must
You
be,
know, hauling all the food and
trek.
stuff over there. Yeah.
But go ahead. Yeah, please.
About Lakeview Fields. Last summer, they had a big poster out there with the new concession stand. Is that a project they are doing? Because
That's the
it was.
project they want, they want the city to do.
Oh, okay.
At Lakeview. That would be part of what, back up
I
to the
didn't see the
Washington
sign,
Youth
but-
Sports Association. That's what they're looking at for some of those Lakeview improvements.
What they want done, I was just looking at it here before we got up, is about the price of the auditorium.
Senior center?
I mean, they want to redo the whole thing.
Yeah, they wanted to move
The
the.
concession stand is like 2 million, and then redoing the fields is like 2.5 million, and then a shed is like, 300,000 or something like that, so. They want to bring the fields in, make them smaller. They want a double-decker concession stand, new parking, a shed to put equipment in, lots of stuff.
Okay, so were they having that out, that display? They had a
They're
literal
trying to drum
display.
up support. They have started this during COVID when St. Louis was shut down. We were able to have tournaments out here, so some of the St. Louis teams came out here. Well, they asked if they could run the concession stand for these tournaments, and we said, sure. And so they raised some money, and they have been raising money since then. I mean, just picture how much money you make selling hot dogs and sodas, but, for this project, to come to the city at the right time and say, all right, city, we would like this done, here's some skin in the game from us.
So
All we can do is-
I don't know
it's a
that we
wish
we
list.
can meet all of their expectations of what they have, but I mean, I think it's worthwhile to go ahead and recognize both of those sports leagues with some money for them to go ahead and do those improvements.
Are they aware of what's going on at Ronsick Field with the new,
But they don't use Runsick
that
Field.
they wanna do?
They don't use Brunswick Field hardly.
No, I know, but they're building that building out of donations.
Yeah, yeah, we can make them aware of that, Sparky, if that's what you're thinking. We can definitely
It's
go.
6:19.
But yes, I mean, that could be.
That's a really good idea.
That could be, I mean, and really, like, for example, the football, I mean, that was all donations when they
Yeah.
built that concession stand that was there. So, I mean, anyway, Bob, you had something?
I'm surprised they want to turf the field unless basically just tired of cutting the grass, but how come they don't talk about crowning the fields?
They may have,
They want to redo, the proposal I got was, I just looked, to turf 2 fields, 1 and 3, so the one closest to baseball and the one down by Park Shop, and then regrade soccer field 2, which is closest to All Abilities playground. Now, for the money we're allotting them, or we potentially could allot them, they won't be able to do all that stuff.
I mean.
And they want a shed too, and
Yeah, I mean,
additional parking.
this is, again, I don't know that the city can just cater to one entity and give them
Do you-
everything
do
of
you-
what they need. I think it's a matter of, again, prioritizing and saying, how much can we put towards it, and then let them go take off with it and see how much. I mean, you can see examples of that right now going on with the main stage roof. I mean, the city didn't have all the money to put the main stage roof up for those bids either. Chamber had to come up with the rest. So I think that's what we have to expect as we move forward, but.
And do you do 2 soccer fields without giving football 1?
Yeah. if we're gonna
The only
split it.
thing, if football hasn't approached us about turfing anything, I would say, I'm not saying that you don't have to, give them a concession, that's something, these are ones that I know that they've approached us, they've come up with plans of what they want. I'm not saying that football hasn't, but I have not met with football in the sense of as much as what these 2 entities have. Okay? To get through the list of the other smaller project, like I mentioned the splash pad, we've recently been given a pitch by What to Do with the Cole Miller House. They're looking at trying to at least have somebody out there at least, once a week would be the plan, if they could
On the
do this
weekend, yeah.
on the weekends. That building has heat, but no AC. They're looking to see if we could get a roadway to go through off of Grand and circle back all the way through. The culvert's still there. I think you'd have to get permission from the chamber to go across their property to get there, from where it used to be, as well as a little trail that wanted to go through there, and probably a low-impact restroom that they would like to go ahead and put there.
And they
So-
wanted a playground too.
So just threw a dollar amount out there based upon some of what the improvements of what they're looking at. Downtown would like to revisit or do improvements to the existing parking lot at Main and Elm. I guess electrical work, some other stuff. There was talk I heard one time of taking out an island. I think Cochran, Joe McGowan that's on their board, came up with some early thoughts of what they could go ahead and do with that. So there's about 600,000 towards that. And then the last thing, and Wayne kind of brought this up, he's been bringing this up to me quite a bit, and I know he's talked with Rotary that sponsored the original sign, but the Welcome to Washington sign that's out there at Burger Park. And
Not a
if we
digital
could-
sign.
Huh?
Not a digital sign.
Not a digital
Okay.
sign, thank
Okay,
you.
that's good.
First he said that, I was like, what? No, I didn't. But, and you can see, there, I mean, just if you take those smaller projects and you get another 1.5 million. So this is all if, these are just recommendations to start some discussion with you, and if there's other projects that you feel, that you saw that long litany of that draft that they provided you, and you feel that that's something that's worthwhile, that needs to be thrown at this, great, bring it up, but I just wanted to start the discussion with this. And again, I'm gonna reiterate right now, Emergency Response hasn't given me their laundry list of stuff that they need. I do not anticipate for them to need another fire station, but we do have other things that they may come up that they're gonna have. So I have no idea what their laundry list of stuff. They weren't given a consultant to go ahead and give them a year to talk about it, that kind of stuff. But they know their own needs, and I know that they're gonna have a list for me shortly to go ahead and consider.
Glaringly absent from either of these lists is the pool house.
That's just what I was gonna say.
That is already under,
That's funded?
That's gonna be funded already under
Okay.
this.
Okay, that's
Thank you.
Yes, those renovations,
Last week,
yeah.
when we had this. I'm
I
like,
should have gone to the council meeting, huh?
No, this was at the combined meeting that we had. I'd asked Darren about it
Yes.
that night and said, hey, this should really be, to me, moving up there somewhere. And he's, reminded me that we're still funded there, so.
We're already there. So, as a matter of fact, when I gave you that list or I gave you that early number about what to do for the facilities, we took a 100 grand out of that number because we know we're probably gonna need that for the pool house renovation, because we had budgeted $389, I think, was what we had budgeted, over 2 years under the capital improvement sales tax. But, the number that they got back from KAI was something like 475. So we said, let's move 100,000, throw that in towards that budget and make sure that covers the pool house renovations for the office.
On that maintenance shed out there, on the master plan, they've got it over $2 million for that? And you're saying it's 1.5, are we
Well,
taking something
There
out
was
of that?
there's some other stuff. I have pots of money budgeted, and some pots of money budgeted in the general fund right now. Because that was, or is, a very small amount is in the current half-cent sales tax. But the 1.9 is with contingencies and everything like that. And then I was looking at the numbers today. It also included, because last time I saw it, Chad and I were talking, last time we saw it, a month or two ago, it was around $1 million or so. And then it went to there was two numbers on that chart. There was 1.5, I think, and then it went up to 1.9. 1.9 was with contingencies and all that stuff. The 1.5 included repaving, which we did not, I think they were trying to do us a favor, but we did not tell them to include that. We just want the darn building is really what we want. Some of the other stuff can come later, but they included paving of a lot, a very large lot to go around the building, and a perimeter fence to go all the way around the building. I'm not saying we don't need either one of those, but those could be added at a later time or a different time.
What about a gate?
Yeah, I mean, fence, gate, yeah, that was included in that.
Their contingency is showing .769.
In the document they gave us the other day?
The priority projects.
Oh, that may not.
1.955 is the budget and 2.769 for the contingency.
Yeah, it's 1.9 under their, I guess, what was the ROM for?
Rough order of
Yeah,
magnitude.
that's without the contingency.
I had my own initials for it the other day, but that's okay.
Oh, yeah, 2.6. I see what you're
WAG.
saying, yeah.
I have a question. Football satisfied with what they have right now, or are they just not talking to us? or-
They just haven't really talked to us too much. I think, I know that they talked to Wayne, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I know that they had talked to him about trying to level off those fields some more to go ahead and get some of the surface water out of it, right?
Football? Yeah, we've been working on that over the last few years. I mean, they mentioned turf, but they weren't adamant about it.
I mean, if we had to, that's what I'm saying, you can reorganize some of these numbers and put some money if they wanted to turf one of the fields, and they got an estimate, we could take a look at it. And maybe, if you did them all three at the same time, you'd have some savings there.
I would say of the three sports, soccer, baseball, softball, and football, football is has the least amount of games, I guess.
So they keep up, I guess, maintenance with the field, it's easier to keep up with the maintenance of the field rather than the other two.
And when
Soccer, we all know that, you know, that began with two.
when we did Runsick, what was the life of that, Bob? Do you know? Bob? How long is that turf on Runsick? I mean, is it a 10-year,
They
20?
said it could go 10 to 12.
That's what I was
Is
gonna
that what
say,
it,
10 to
okay,
12.
that's
All
the,
depends on how much you
And-
use it.
right, that's what I figured. And then, I'm just asking, so in 10 or 12 years, then the city would be somewhat, or hopefully expected to replace that?
Well, that's the problem. I mean, you're gonna have to go ahead, those are some
Well,
major
because I'm just
expenses.
saying, if we, you know, yeah, we could get a great deal, maybe doing 3 fields, but if we're gonna get 10 years out of them, we gotta also figure out where that, and how much it costs to replace it.
That's
I
right.
mean, I'm not against doing this, but that's gotta be something we gotta
I
think
feel
about.
the same way when these parks with the little squeegee floors or whatever, and he comes to me and tells me how much it's gonna cost to replace them. I was
Yeah,
like,
no,
Oh, the rubber flooring?
yeah, the rubber flooring that you have out there at the All Abilities Park, you know, for
Yeah.
example. Because they have a shelf life too, and then everybody's like, oh, we've gotta replace it.
It's
Sticker shock.
showing wear too.
And I have a question on the proposed building, out at the park for the senior center. and the- So, are we thinking, I guess I'd like to know more about it. It would be a large building, 1 or 2 stories that would hold offices and then facility for, like, I'm just assuming farm equipment or exhibitors. And that then when that's done, that would be pickleball.
Or volleyball
it could
courts.
be, or it could be rented for some other big convention or whatever,
Absolutely.
wedding or whatever.
Yeah.
And, okay, what was my other question with that? So I'm assuming, it's been a while, but you know, like when the horses came and we had all the Clydesdales, that, in that area is where you're talking about building this building.
No.
No,
I was
where-
thinking-
About, actually, the admin building, I think, is where they're.
The admin building, you could-
But yeah, but it's
But
not.
where that tent
You're
is set up
going
during the-
bigger.
Well,
Yeah, it could be
you're
parking
going-
down there,
Yeah, you're going longer for
Longer
sure,
that
because
way.
it would take up the,
and 2 stories.
Right.
and Darren's had the discussions, but I think what they're asking about is, A, the use stand for Borgia is a long past need to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
replaced.
I agree.
The other end, same thing, the standalones, are both in major need of repair. The
Right.
admin building is kind of outrun its life as well, as
Yeah.
far as what they're using in there, and for, you know, that's also police security, everybody's running out of that
Yep,
building.
it's,
during
it's,
that
it's
week.
craziness.
That's just that week, so, you know.
And one
there's-
other thing to think about, I mean, it's like if you decide, I mean, with this, and you decide to put the kitchen amenities of what they were, you know,
Right.
accustomed to, like at the Elks, which is
Right.
very large, and we found out
Well,
how
they
many,
might
a
not.
lot of food was being made out of that. But
Yeah.
anyway, but the idea is that if you put a kitchen, something similar like that, that could also be used during the fair.
Right.
And would it be a building that would, in case of, like how we've evacuated people into the home ec building?
that's the other
This
thing.
is another building to help evacuate, so I mean,
Our
we should
shelter.
include that in the
Or
discussion.
shelter,
I mean, it serves a purpose, but during that point, are we talking metal?
I'm in on the chamber's discussion on that a little bit, so, I mean, they're looking at a building as big as the home ec building that's out there. It's
Yeah,
it's gonna
that's
be
what I
big.
would think.
And you
How big
basically-
is a home
you
ec
take-
building, do you know?
I don't know, I'm
Square
bad
footage?
with the square footage.
In the
It's
last
big.
discussions we were
Very
having, is
large.
you'd take everything on that south side of the road, all the way down to the first aid center, everything would go.
Yeah,
That's what
that
I
whole
thought.
block
Fast
of,
aid center, you'd probably rotate the building around, and front of it would be
Yes.
on the roadway facing
Going
the
that,
auto.
yeah, that makes
That way
sense.
that-
As far
with
as
Big
aggregating?
equipment, everything can get in and out easy, you don't gotta worry about going up the Lincoln
Right.
Park Road.
Yep,
Like
yep,
all the
that
way
makes
back to
sense.
Agro, I
There's
guess.
no, there's a requirement for no loss of green space in the park, since it's
Mm-hmm.
federal ground, so you got, it's not only the building, it's a parking lot too, right? So there's a lot of green space that gets eaten up by, the bigger this thing gets, the more cars you gotta park there, the more pavement you got, so.
Right,
They're still in the very early stages of this, but
right.
What's the plans for the old tennis courts from that restroom up there? Still tear it down?
that would come out and offset some of the green
They're gonna
space
put
loss you're gonna
something in
get.
there?
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
makes
that
sense.
would
We
work.
put that back in grass, so you could offset some of the
because
green
this
space you're gonna
expo hall
lose.
thing would have bathrooms with it too, on the,
Right,
on the
of
lower
course.
level.
The
And so they,
idea was to have some exterior accessible restrooms for the outdoor pickleball courts, because that's one of the things we're hearing too, is
Yeah.
these are great to use, now I gotta walk all the way down there.
So they're trying to get as many uses as they can, even
Yeah.
maybe, you know, can you bring the emergency services back out? If you got a big enough building, then bring them back into the fairgrounds instead of them being off at the Army Reserve Center.
Like- it's
So they're
like
looking at
Gav-
trying to get the most use out
Like
of it.
Gavin said before, I mean, they're getting all this exercise, but they don't wanna walk.
To go to the bathroom.
So go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
but yeah, the old bathrooms and the tennis courts would be gone then, and that'd be, go back to green space and
Yeah.
kind of get away from that house a little bit.
Yeah, and that's good for those neighbors.
Then on the backside of the building, you'd replace the Borgia stand, the Optimus stand.
Yes, I got it.
But that's,
I was just trying to see which way it was gonna go, and
We
I
had
had
some
all
discussion,
that.
so now in the fair, you know, the lines all just kind of merge there, it's a pain to walk up and down. So this would rotate that 90 degrees away and spread some of that lines out, so it makes it a little easier to get through there as well, so there's a lot of benefits to it.
And you really do think that this could be done for 6 million?
well, I haven't done like a finished building, I guess, you know, but if I did 275 a square foot times 15,000 square feet,
That's
still
okay.
less than 6,
Okay,
so I don't know. I,
and really, we, you know, this kinda came up last minute, we kinda threw this out when we had our combined meeting here a week or two ago. I don't even know how long ago it was, maybe just last week.
Oh, it was last week, yeah, last Wednesday.
The original was, you know, obviously doing the changes over at the auditorium, which I'm in full support of too.
oh, yeah, I don't want a
That's a
building
great
just sitting
place as
there.
well. You've got, you know, the pool facilities, you've got pickleball inside there, there's a lot of
Yeah.
things you can do there with the senior
Right.
center. You wouldn't have to move them out for 2 to 4 weeks every year. So it really comes down to where do we wanna go and what kind of other,
where do you want to go with it, and,
what other potential do you have with the building and what other potential do you have for somebody to come up with a checkbook?
yeah.
So are you talking about the chamber and the fair would help with that building?
They could
financially,
possibly, or whatever, I would envision with this, the lion's share would come from the capital improvement sales tax.
Right, I understand.
But if they had some other amenities, yes, that certainly, every project that we have on this list could have somebody raise money to come up with additional. Let's make that very clear, Betty.
Ain't no if about that.
We won't turn down a check if somebody wants to go ahead and add to it.
Take the money.
So,
But they're also good, all of them are very good proponents to help us go out in the next year and say, hey,
You could
what do
sell,
we wanna do?
yep.
I think that this,
And you're involving a lot of people.
That's
That's-
important.
That's the key.
that's the reason why this list looks the way it does, so.
And
Most
also,
different uses you can.
Absolutely.
senior center being very accessible, we can get, those are voters. The senior center people are voters, and so are their families.
Absolutely.
And those are the people we have to talk to.
And I think there is, we can't get past the stigma of, oh my gosh, you're gonna put us back in the auditorium, because all they think of is the auditorium and how it looks today. Maybe if you talk about a brand-new building, they'd probably be a little bit more excited about it. And if it fits this joint purpose, and it helps the fair, you're creating a pickleball court, for example, during the rest of the year too, that you can go ahead and use. They're using it during the day for their needs. I mean, and like he said, the only inconvenience is, you'd
might
be
be
out of
closed.
commission for a few weeks, just part
And
of the fair. But
realistically-
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I do too. And realistically though, with some of that, they might be out 3 weeks, but look at what they're getting in return.
That's right.
And if we do
Has nothing to do
upgrade
with no time.
the auditorium, because that's the eyesore that we keep hearing about in terms of this building's never rented, it's never used, you know what I mean? So I guess that what I'm gonna say is my top 3 on this list of ifs would be, I still think maintenance is extremely important. I'm putting that number 1. I'm putting senior center number 2, and then I'm going to put city auditorium number 3. And I'm not trying to if there's any left over, we can help. But those 3 things, I think, benefit. We've done a lot, we still have a lot to do, but we've done a lot in areas for kids. I mean, I still think we need to do more, but those would be my top 3. Because I think you can sell it.
I think Lakeview is really important, though. I mean, it's amazing how many people got to Lakeview, all the games out there. I mean, I think if you want support, Lakeview has to be up in the top there.
My son played there 20 years ago, and it hasn't changed.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
And like now for
Exactly
flag
right.
football,
The high pavilion's gone.
Yeah, that's good. So where would you put that, Dave?
It is.
If you pick the top 3?
It's all in our minds, so.
I think number 1 has to be the park maintenance building. I totally agree, that's gotta be number 1. I think the city auditorium, because of the building, I mean, for example, last year we wanted to have the seminars out there, and Wayne's first comment was, it's gonna be hot,
And that was in September, yeah.
and that was in September.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's gotta be number 2. I would really put Lakeview as number 3, because if you wanna get your voters, there's so many people, and I think that's one of the problems, we have with East Central. You gotta have something that everybody feels a part of it. And Lakeview, I mean, I cannot believe all the people that are out there. And like right now, my grandson's playing flag football, but there's no bleachers out there.
Right.
Right.
Not that that's critical, but it would be nice to have bleachers out there.
In the survey that they did, Phoenix, the Lakeview Park had 63% of the people visited.
Yeah.
It's tied for number 7 on the list with the main park. The top park, of course, is Hillerman Lion Lake, 94%, Riverfront, 93%, Farmers Market, 82%, Fairgrounds, and the stage was 81%, Phoenix Park, 71%, the aquatic, 65%, the main park, Lakeview, 63%. The surprise I had on here is Echo Camp Park, number 14 at 27%.
Maybe they just walked by it.
That one shocked me.
Shocked us all.
But,
I know,
just interesting.
but I'm glad you mentioned
Only
those.
one thing
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to bring up, as far, this is try to get some money into the park system for these capital improvements that won't come out of the set. We need to resurrect Friends of the Park.
Oh,
Yeah, that's another good.
Well,
We
I
need
will,
to
let
do
me,
that.
let me give you, let me add on to that.
Yeah.
So, we instructed our attorney to go ahead and start up another 501c3 for the parks, what's it gonna be called? You remember the name? Anyway,
Something similar to
Washington Parks something.
yeah.
But this had to do with the generous donation that we've been working with the benefactor for the Flag Plaza. He really wanted to see that, that we had that. When we made the argument when he made his donation before the end of the year, last year, that, you know, this is a tax write-off, you can give to the city, that's still a tax write-off, it doesn't, have to be a 501c3. But he really wanted to see that, and we talked internally, and I just said, Mark, please go ahead and set this thing up. Mark's got it set up. I think we need to have a meeting pretty soon. There's going to be 5 board members. But there is your 501c3 again, that you can go ahead, where others can go ahead and do contributions to that. And we can certainly go ahead and use it again. I wish we wouldn't have lost it before. We would have had it in place, but it didn't prevent us from still getting that generous donation. So.
Yeah, no,
And
that's
it needs
good.
to be something like what downtown Washington got, Washington Historical Site. Various categories, so that you get that guy that wants to put in $50 a year, or something like that too.
Or that guy like Sparky that wants to give $5,000 a year, right?
He's gonna write the check
Well,
right now.
Yeah,
I was hoping a month.
That's what I was
It's not me, it's my wife that wants it.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'll remind you of that.
Let me call her.
You
Oh,
meant,
are we on TV?
Oh, you're on tape now.
Chris, rewind it back to the 50-minute mark. Yeah. I know you were talking about the popularity, of what the responses we got, and I know trails were a big part of that, and you don't see that in here, but I don't want you to think that that's limited, because we do get grant funding typically for those types of trails. He got it for downtown, for the connection down, or not downtown, but down at the riverfront, for that connection. Bush Creek Trail was 80% funded by federal dollars. We anticipate on going after those funds as well. And we do have some other options of how we leverage our local match. You can either do it, obviously the general fund could do it, but in some cases you can still go ahead and do it with the transportation dollars, because that's what we did with the Bush Creek, the phase 1 of that trail. So I don't want you to think that we haven't, with this list, we haven't thought about that. It's just that we don't feel that you need to go ahead. And these are projects that you really probably don't have a lot of other external funding sources to go ahead and help you with. This is all local, so.
Things like, taking care of the erosion and everything down on the riverfront, that doesn't come into the capital side of things?
I think it would qualify for,
Like flagpole, that area that needs
That-
to be replaced,
that definitely would.
so
Yes.
that needs to be on here, right?
Well, I think we got some money that we've got with this donation, and you got the second phase of when you put in the
Oh, you're
trail.
talking about the wall on the back.
He's talking about the wall on the
Right.
back
The
side of the
pavement.
Flag
That's
Plaza.
falling apart. Yeah.
Like I said last week, in next year's budget, so after October 1 of this year, FY '26, we got, Charles, our engineering department figured up, based on the ideas that we had $120,000 budgeted to address that wall.
Okay.
So, this year yet, hopefully this year yet. But soon, yeah.
Darren, something else, that Welcome to Washington sign, we actually talked about that 10 years ago. If you've ever went up there, the blocks are falling apart, and I know they've.
He tells me this, and I'm just, because I drive by it, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't look that bad. What are you talking about, And then-
10 years
From the
ago,
road,
looks
it looks
bad.
fine.
yeah, we came up with a plan 10 years ago to take it down and redo it, and every year when it gets planted, I mean, it's not safe.
It's,
Yeah.
shifting and,
Darren, you're driving too fast.
yeah.
Yeah,
It was
he's getting
put
out
in.
of
I don't like
town.
looking at signs when I'm going down the road anyway.
It's-
Smell the
I hate
flowers.
signs.
That was put in like 1990, I think, and there's been
Oh,
zero
yeah.
renovations to it since.
Yeah, the blocks are shot.
Right.
I would agree with Tessie on the building, the maintenance building, and then the senior center and the auditorium. Those are my I know what Dave's saying about, I'm one of those busy people who's out there a couple times a week at Lakeview. And I think, you know, most likely, maybe we could work a deal with them to work on part of it for themselves.
Well, that's all I have. If you have questions, I mean, obviously, we got some more time, but he's running out of time with regards to the
Yeah, he's got it.
document itself.
I do have one thing I wanted to discuss while we're all, you mentioned it earlier, I think, maybe at the beginning of your conversation or speech. I mean, what's the thoughts, I still need to verify with Chris Hani on this, but, converting, possibly, I mean, it's an option. It came about at the very last minute when we were working on this park master plan, so they didn't write it in. But I guess there's still time they wouldn't be able to come up with a cost or anything. I think we're past that point, but the use of McLaughlin Field, if they're not, no one's really football doesn't use it anymore. Baseball only uses it maybe for practices. They don't really play any games there. And my understanding from talking to Chris Hani is they don't like having games there because they don't like hauling all the concession stand stuff over there. The umpires don't like to drive over. They like to be in one, just like everyone else. They all want to be in one spot, one central location. And they don't want to have, the umpires don't want to drive over there, or, they don't want to have to haul their stuff over there, this and that and the
I
other.
didn't think the umpires could drive.
I used to ride my bike.
I mean, the park you could totally convert that into like a neighborhood park and put a walking trail in, a pavilion, a splash pad, leave a t-ball field there with a backstop. You could have an access drive into it with a small parking lot, where you don't have to park on the street. It's just a thought. Because right now we're spending time, we'd still have to maintain it, whether it was a park or a baseball field, but, we're dragging it right now and mowing the field for very little use. We'd probably still have to mow some of it if it was just a park.
Turn
Do
it-
you
So
have
it's
those-
just a thought, I don't,
Yep.
Wayne, do you have those numbers as to how many times is it actually used a year?
The ball field?
it's not, the only time it's really rented is if the baseball softball association would have practices there. I'll verify with him, I meant to email him today and I
But they're not playing games, to your knowledge.
Well,
Well,
okay,
yeah,
go
but
ahead.
the Littles did.
The-
The Littles played out.
They had like 4, if I remember right, Chad
And
said.
they had a couple times this past, after the rain, but they use that. I know you guys don't think they use that field, and maybe not the way that everybody wants that field to be used, but there are little kids out there playing ball.
Oh, I'm
They
not
are-
talking about pickup games. I think
Oh,
he's
yeah,
talking.
I'm
but-
talking about.
But we're talking about instead of eradicating the field, maybe
I'm
bring the
with you.
field in because dads and sons are out there playing ball. Little kids were out there doing flag football because they didn't know what they were doing. So maybe it's not utilized in the sense that the way the athletic association would like it to be used, but it is utilized by people in that area.
So you could make it a
North-
They have other stuff.
You
on
can-
it.
You're saying add
We can add amenities and
Yes.
still keep the
yeah.
purpose
You
of
could
that.
bring the field in a little
Yeah.
bit and put out there, but,
A very, very short ball field.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
the
Like a
little
T-ball
guys.
field.
The other
Lawrence
Is there an
Tate
older
played
group
out
of
there
men
last
that
year
do?
for
What's that?
games.
Isn't there an older group of guys
Yes,
that do
they
something
play,
other
they
too?
play out there.
Cork
Yeah,
ball.
okay.
Yeah, they do it twice a week.
Oh,
Every
twice
Friday
a week.
morning they do it.
Yeah, and they've been out, I've seen some of them
Corkball.
out there, yeah.
do they still play softball out there?
No,
Not to my knowledge.
not unless it's a pickup game. There's no leagues.
Thing of the past.
Yep, yep. But, and I don't know about off-street parking. Maybe that would be a place possibly to put a splash pad.
That's,
That would, if you got your water there, to me,
Yeah,
that would be
Got a
more
well.
economical.
Got a well.
Yeah, right there you got, that saves you some money, but, yeah, I would just hate to see that ball field completely go away.
I think what you're looking for is just to massage some language in there for reuse of the park, basically,
Yeah, in
and
the
just put
future.
that in the overall plan.
But
And
that's a good
I
idea.
like that, keeping it as a little bit of a field and then.
I think it's a
add
better,
to
it would be a better spot for a splash pad, because right now,
I don't,
there's not room at Phoenix Park if we still want to do like a satellite shed there. The
Yeah.
only flat spot that's left up on top is right next to the current bathroom.
Right.
And it would be, we want to try to do at some point, a freestanding building, small shed there for equipment. And we don't even know if we have, right now, we don't even know if we have enough land for that
Right.
there.
Yeah.
But, so the other spot that came in my head, I told the master plan, I was like, well, I guess, see if it fits in down at Optimus Park. But it doesn't really, because you got teenagers down there skateboarding and could be playing basketball. We're putting in a playground there. It's coming tomorrow, actually. And so, I mean, McLaughlin would be a nice spot for a splash pad.
That's a great idea.
And it spreads.
It's walkable and bikeable.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's right there where.
Walk
a lot of
often,
people
yeah.
Walk to that park versus.
Yeah, it's in a neighborhood.
And it spread amenities throughout the town.
Yes.
Nice pavilion.
Excuse me, Wayne, tell me this, is the capital improvement tax specifically earmarked for the Parks Department, or is it a bigger number than we look at, and some of it goes to the street department, et cetera, et cetera?
Let me repeat what I said earlier so that I don't get shot by the fire department.
Yeah.
It's for both emergency response and it's for the park system. In the past, for example, years ago, before you had a transportation sales tax, it was also used for certain street projects. It would set aside for that.
Okay.
As in 2005, when the city passed the transportation sales tax, which brings up I'm going to talk about that in a little bit here, but we quit putting projects on there for capital improvement sales tax. The other thing we tried to wean our other things off of, I would say, is like, for example, our public works. Our water towers, you still have within your capital improvement sales tax this last go-round. Kevin Quatham has got money in there to go ahead and do lining of the sewer lines and stitchiform and stuff like that. We've tried to go ahead, that's the reason why the city's looked long and hard at raising the rates in the water and the sewer, and we did that so that they would go ahead and be self-funded enterprise funds, which is what they should be, based on user fees. You shouldn't be sitting there worrying about your water system and worrying about 8 years from now, seeing if the voters are gonna give you a half-cent sales tax to go ahead and build a water tower. You should base it on your user fees. So we have tried to go ahead and work our way to that point. That frees up more money in the capital improvement sales tax, but you are sharing that with emergency response. So I know that they're gonna have pumper trucks, they're gonna have stuff like that, for another example, all the emergency sirens that you have in town, they all got updated in 2018, right after the tax passed. And shortly after that, all of our emergency responders got new radio system for both police and fire department. That was pretty pricey as well. And then, of course, we all know that the fire station is
Yeah,
going
we've
up.
got
That's
fire
being paid for.
stations, yeah.
So you share that. I want to make sure that you're very clear. In the past, historically, that's been shared with those entities. One thing that's unique, and I'll tell you guys about it as well, and I keep telling the mayor this, that nobody's telling me I'm crazy yet, but I mean, we have pushed to get the transportation sales tax. We're doing presentations on that, on the discussion of renewal. That tax is also a half-cent sales tax that the city has for transportation projects. Started in 2005, and that's what funded Highway 100 to go from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, all the way out to I-44. It also is responsible for the streets that you see in town and how they're maintained, especially the local streets. And it also, that fund is also helps, as I said earlier, your Bush Creek Trail. We use that 20% match for that with transportation funds. But probably just as important, if anything, we use it to match federal grants that we go ahead and leverage. I mean, you see Jefferson Street under reconstruction right now. That's 80% funded by the feds, and we have a 20% match that the city provides, and that's out of that transportation sales tax. The trick is, when you do those projects that are federally funded, it takes 4 years probably from the time that you submit or get ready to submit the application to the time when you see construction of the actual project. Jefferson Street didn't happen last year. We said, oh, we need to redo Jefferson Street. No, that was 4 years ago that we started that process. So a question that why we're looking at the transportation sales tax now is that it sunsets in 2030. if you don't sit there and start to think about the continuation of that sales tax in the future for projects, you're not gonna have that revenue source to help with all of those. And so I would invite you all to learn a lot more about it if you want. Coffee with the Bear on the 15th, which is next Tuesday.
I sent it to him.
It'll be here at 8 a.m., and I'll be doing a presentation on the future projects, transportation projects that the city is looking at, and we are looking at placing that on the same ballot in 2026, a year from now. And so we're starting those discussions already, and that's the reason why we're doing that now rather than wait till 2030 when the tax expires, because if you wait till then, you've got a gap of 3 to 4 years where you're not gonna be able to apply for federal projects, or you're gonna have to tap into the general fund to go ahead and be the match. And we don't want to be in that position. I think our community is too used to at least having those transportation projects be updated, be completed. They don't want to see, we don't have any money for it. I don't think that's gonna go over very well. So, it's a good question. I mean, you asked about capital improvement, but I mean, it led into the other thing, but I just want you all to know that we're pushing to have both of those up for renewal at that same time.
Same ballot?
Same ballot. Well, it won't be on the same, you'll vote for them separately.
Right.
Just,
But
yes, same ballot.
Okay.
That's all I have. The only thing I would say is if, I think it's important maybe for the master plan to list, if nobody has any heartburn of any of these projects being listed as possible funding under capital improvement sales tax, I think it's important for him to have that in that plan, in that document, so as we move forward, the mayor's gonna have to put together a committee for both capital improvement sales tax and transportation. I think we always said this would be wrapped up in a bow, if you will, of we vet these projects with the general public and then be able to go ahead and present that to that committee at a later date. Obviously, it's a guideline for him for the next 10 to 20 years, so to speak, but still, immediately in the next 8 years, these are projects that we want to see done. So, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Darren.
you, Darren.
So does anyone see, I need to have comments, anything, comments, projects, all that stuff due to PDS, the master plan firm by April 14th. So like what Darren was just saying, does anyone have any heartburn with submitting these as a priority for the next 8 years?
Or at least we have, if you want to add something or something else, I mean, get it to them now so that we can at least have that as a separate, not just immediate impact, but we can have it as capital improvement sales tax projects.
So we could add more? Like if we have our primary projects, we have our
For your
smaller
budget. Remember your
consideration.
budget testing.
Could you have a wish list? Well, because I mean,
No, absolutely.
yeah, because I think some of the things that I got out of here was like, stabilization, like Lions Lake stabilization. I mean, just certain things that, another thing, and I don't know, I'm not big on the signage either. But, you know, they were talking about areas where maybe we needed to put some video cameras because of damages. And there, we do have some areas that don't, and the Cool Miller property would be one of them. And we've had 2 fires out there. So, I mean, I'm just saying, these are wish list things.
The only thing with regards to cameras, we have, we've been able to handle that through our IT section and our funding out of the general fund.
It doesn't have to go on
Yeah,
this.
so it doesn't have to come out of you. I mean, that's part of us with just damage control, loss prevention, stuff like that we do. So I just don't see a need to go ahead and highlight that as part of capital, or at least to come out of this fund.
Okay,
The good news is we have 5 cameras going up at the Cole Miller house, probably this month or next month. We had the trench dug and the cable's been run. We were just waiting for NOC to get back under contract with the city, so. The infrastructure's there and the cameras have been purchased. They just need to get up now.
well, and we're doing the standardized parking signage, so we don't have to, that's not a,
Being done.
Yeah, some of their signage stuff, and I was fully aware of it, and I've been working on it behind the scenes, is Bush Creek Greenway is not signed very well. Miller Post nature reserve's not signed very well. I'm fully aware of that. I'm working on that. I think those were the two main ones. So like the Greenway needs some wayfinding signage, like at the intersections, like 0.5 miles to the dog park or 8
Right.
miles to East Riverfront Trail and, different things like that. And so I'm working on that. Some of the green bikeway signs around town are redundant, or there's not enough of it. There's not ones in the correct places. So
Right.
I had an intern work on that last year, and I'm trying to work with the street department on fixing or putting in, taking out some of those signs and things like that.
Okay, and one thing I found I really liked, but I mean, I gotta win the lottery to give it to the city, but I love the idea of solar lighting. I love the idea that we need to, within our parks, come up with the plan, and that was suggested for lighting replacement, but it would really be phenomenal if we could, over a period of time, come up with solar lighting as opposed to what we've got. And it's just a dream, but I thought that was a really, really good ecological idea.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. The technology is becoming better and better and more reliable. We've kind of shied away from it in the past because there's a lot there, when they first came out, and Kevin, you might be able, I don't know how much you deal with them or not, but there was a lot of problems with them. We have enough problems with regular lights. We didn't want to add,
Right.
something that caused a lot of problems.
And
But
this is
now
down-
we're getting
this
to
is
the
down
point.
the road.
There's certain areas that you can definitely try them out, like, like the dog park doesn't really have any lighting now.
that would be a good
The
spot.
east end of the trail doesn't really have any lighting now, and if they didn't light up on a day or two, it might not be the end of the world per se, that type of thing. So I'm definitely open to looking into some of that.
The trail system, I'm talking bicycles mainly, there's no mention here for that. Is that long-term also playing into that, getting us to the Katy Trail?
As I said earlier, I mean, I don't know that it needs to be listed as capital, because the capital items are pretty much stuff that you don't have a lot of other outside funding sources to help you. All of the trails that we can apply for can be federally applied for. And we have TAP grants, or that's the name what they use now for it. That's what we use to get Bush Creek, for example. So all of that. So any trails that need to be extended, I mean, from, the concept has to be, you gotta meet certain criteria in order to go ahead and get funding or be competitive, let's just put it that way. But we submit those applications through East West Gateway, and we were successful at getting Bush Creek. I still envision a phase 2 of Bush Creek that would be off-road, off of A Street, through those areas that are undeveloped right now, that at some point that would still go ahead and that would be your phase 2. That certainly would make a great application for us to get federal dollars with. And so, we didn't list those as priorities on here because of not that they're not priorities, they can still be in your plan as a priority. It's just, we don't really rely upon the capital improvement sales tax to fund those.
If anything, you use the half-cent transportation
Yes.
to have that funding to go
There you
after the
go.
grant, so.
What does it take for us to get to the Katy Trail?
What would it take for us to get to the Katy
Do we
Trail?
have to work with-
Helicopter.
Do we have to work with?
Yeah, it depends on how fast you ride.
Do we have to work with Warren County and St. Charles County?
I think yes, you'd still have to go ahead and deal. I don't think St. Charles County would be necessarily the problem. I think it's always been making it a priority for Warren County. The last time we took part in any meaningful discussions, I think it's been years, but
During COVID.
they did not want to, for example, be off-road, off of 47, even though they had the right-of-way, because they get complaints from the neighboring property, or the neighboring farmers that don't want to lose the farm ground that they get, even though it's not their property to begin with. It goes they farm, as you all know, they go all the way up to wherever the shoulder is. So they always give their constructive feedback on those types of things. They don't want to give up those easements if you wanted to do that. We've always talked about the idea that if you wanted to do Augusta Bottom Road is that connection. That's been something that's been discussed before, but, it's been a long time since anybody, you're gonna have to get cooperation from Warren County to go ahead and do that. And I think we've got probably the best relationship that we've ever had with Warren County in the history of the city for a long time, or at least ever since the airport was built, put it that way. I think we've got the best relationship with them, so.
Do you want to talk about, or, I'm assuming you know this, Charles and I have talked, but they're doing that study on raising 47, and if that would ever go through.
They're doing a hydrology study on the Missouri River on the north side, and we asked for that to go ahead and be done. A bigger project that we're looking at would be the possibility of some type of protection system, not only for raising or keeping 47 open, which they could keep 47 open by just simply at a few key spots, go ahead and raise 47 and raise the grade of it. But one other thing that we have raised some interest in, at least at the federal level, is the possibility of coming up with something that would protect our airport and also open up probably 1,500 to 2,000 acres over there, take it out of the floodplain as some type of levee system over there, like a mini Monarch levee of what you see down at Chesterfield. And with that, as a matter of fact, when we showcased that idea and that concept to our federal legislators a few years back, Elise Blaine Lutgemeyer's office included us in an omnibus bill, because the idea was get more resources, get your airport built up even more to where you you make a better argument of what you're trying to go ahead and save over there or keep it from flooding. And so they awarded us a $3 million grant to go ahead and extend the runway, which we're under bid right now, I think at the end of this month. So the levee though system, the idea was that's a lot cheaper than doing a causeway of what you have over there, up in Herman when they built their bridge. Because, and then on top of it, you don't protect any of that property from, you don't take it out of the floodplain.
No.
So with a levee though, you would. And so that's been the discussion. The next phase is just getting this study back, this hydrology study, see what it shows, how it would impact it. And it was just a preliminary study that we can request from the Corps to go ahead and do. So Charles from our city engineers is supposed to get that back, I think he said, sometime in May.
So there would be a bike trail on top of that levee?
You could possibly, if you wanted to, yeah, it could possibly be
Just
done
like
that way.
Chesterfield?
Just different funding sources, because, obviously levee maintenance is a big deal, so you have a maintenance road across the top, you got
Yeah.
levee funds helping to pay for it, then you got trail funds helping to pay for it, so.
That's a real possibility, but I mean, the levee's that levee concept's got a long ways to go. I mean, it's been shown on a map, but I mean, we did raise enough. We presented it as a long-term project with, when MoDOT Commission was here, and they met here last October. And I know it raised a few eyebrows of those board members, and then we had a few meetings with MoDOT afterwards, but getting this study back, I think, is the next step, so.
I do have one more thing. I want to tell you under, I guess, my report or new business. I've spent more time at Riverview Park in the last month than I have all my 6+ years here for a variety of different reasons. And after spending so much time up there, if you recall at the January 30th public open house for the park master plan, they had some, in that plan for Riverview Park, some raised platform viewing areas where you could sit on a picnic table and just view the river. Apparently no one liked that. There must have been a whole group of homeowners from around that area that came, and they vetoed that. Even though it's still in the plan, I gotta have the firm take it out. But after being up there so much, Darren and I actually walked it one day with Chad, and then tomorrow I'm actually walking with Chad and Josh. We had to do some tree work up there recently. That's kind of what got me up there a few times to begin with. But we're going to put in, I've talked for the last month or two, as I run into homeowners up there, I kind of throw this idea out to them, and no one's told me no yet. That's an awful idea. Is that maybe we, instead of doing the viewing platforms, we just run a trail through the top, in the woods, but at the top of the hillside, it meanders through the woods, it might have to go through a couple valleys or whatever. And so down there at Westway, you would go down into the woods, walk the mulch trail, along Riverview, the 7 acres of Riverview Park, and then pop back up on the east end. And then, because the First Parkway and the Third Parkway, people walk a lot, and they walk First Parkway and Third Parkway a lot, just on the asphalt. And so this would give them an option on their loop, one of their loops, they could walk a path through the woods and then pop back up on down on the east end or on the west end and still continue their loop. And so as I ran into homeowners up there, they're like, oh, I think that would be fine. And no one's told me no. I presented at the Lions Club a couple weeks ago, and I presented all these projects and potential projects and donation projects. And at the end, one guy asked me, and I don't know where this came from, but he goes, I heard you guys are putting in a parking lot up there at Riverview Park. And I was like, no, I don't know why we would do that. But I don't know if that was a rumor mill or what, but no parking lot, just, so we're getting ready. I'm walking it tomorrow with Josh because he's going to be the one using the forestry cutter. Darren and I talked. So in the past, we've had some problems with homeless up there, just camping. We currently have problems with homeowners up there dumping.
Yes.
I think if we get more people walking through the park, it could cut down on some of that because there'll be more eyes on the park, there'll be more eyes in the park, in the actual wood line. If they see a homeless person, they'll probably call the police. I'm hoping if they see their neighbor dumping stuff there, they'll say something, that type of thing. And so we're gonna use a forestry cutter and cut a trail through there, rough cut it, right now, this spring, and then just leave it till the fall. And I want to see if I get any comments, complaints, anything like that. And if we get a bunch of complaints, then we won't do anything with it. If no one says anything or people like it, then this fall we'll dress it up a little bit and put some mulch down and start using
You
it.
take down a lot of trees? No, you're just going.
We're trying to work around good trees, main trees. There's a lot of bad trees up there.
Well, there's been a lot of dumping and there's a lot of invasive species up there. So I mean, clearing that out,
We're not clearing out. I mean, we're clearing out a walkway big enough for a person to walk. It might be a little bigger than that right now. Right now, it's gonna be big enough for the machine to get through, but in the end, it would be nothing, not like Miller Post, like those big wide walkways that we have up there. This would be like a true nature trail.
Well, there was somebody that went around to the neighbors, because I had 3 of them call me, because they knew I was on the park board. And they didn't want necessarily anything done, I'm just saying.
Sure
And whoever it was said there was gonna be this and this and this, and I'm like, we haven't even talked about it as a park board, so it's a concept, it's an idea. And so, I was just curious, because I know they dump, and we talk about that. John and I talked to him a lot about it, because we know a lot of those people, and it's like, you can't do that, but.
What are they dumping?
Oh, they mow their grass, the limbs come down on the trees, they just feel that they can go.
Yard waste.
Yep, they can go.
Yard waste.
And then they get upset because then there were homeless there. I know that they, called a couple of the council people a few times. So I don't know. I mean, I like the idea. But I just didn't want to see good trees cut down and subtle, because they'll.
Yeah, subtle is the key.
Subtle is the key word there. They will go crazy.
Yeah, that's why we're gonna do it and then leave it sit for a while and.
Okay.
And the other thing is, we do hardly any work up there, except when people call, and so there's
Right.
some cleanup work. Like I had a guy call me the other day. The whole thing started is we limbed up the trees up there so the contracted mower can mow better, because we noticed the contracted mower was mowing less and less
Right.
away from the trees.
Right,
And then we had some windstorms and some trees fell.
Right.
There was one that fell not across the street, but onto the street. So then my guys up there, and we cut some that were leaning towards the street. And then that's when we started looking around. But then the more I looked around, I found like 5 different dumping spots. And now, most of it's down in the wood line, except the other day, there's 2 utility poles that are like 5 feet off the street. and the contractor mower wasn't mowing real great around them, and they kind of grew up in weeds. Well, then someone this fall dumped a bunch of pine needles there, so if the contractor mower wanted to mow that area, they couldn't even mow it because it was this high in pine needles. And so I personally shoved all that stuff into the woods and made it a clear spot where they can mow. I got a complaint the other day, based on all the activity we've been doing up there. He wanted to know, there's some trees. I think another tree did fall from our last windstorm, and it was tangled up in vines and brought a bunch of vines down on the west end. He wanted to know when we were coming up and cleaning that up, and I said, well, it's not a priority right now. We can still mow around it, it's not on a street, blah, blah. He did not like that answer, and was gonna write a letter to the editor. But my point is, if we get a trail in up there, we'll be more apt to do stuff up there to, right now, we do 1% maintenance up there,
Right.
basically. But we'll have to, occasionally mulch the trail, make sure there's no low limbs and stuff like that. And so the maintenance would gradually improve in time, is what I'm trying to say, for them.
Is there a ravine or anything that could use, the yard waste, to give them a spot, okay, if you, tell them to haul it to the recycle center?
Evan, we're not giving them a spot. No. Then you give me a spot where I live, and you give him
Okay.
a spot where he lives. You don't do
I
that.
sit
It opens up a
corrected.
can of worms.
You don't give him a spot. Everybody in the city has to take care of
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I agree.
Go to the recycling center.
No, I'm not
That's all I
kind.
have. I mean, I guess, the only other thing is, I just want to make sure we're clear, like, if you have anything else, let me know, like, if there's other projects we need to discuss, either we need to do it now, or, send something to me. If you see other stuff in the manual, or the document, I should say, that is either a mistake, or you think needs clarification, or you just want more information on, contact me, but I gotta have everything to PDS by April 14th. The deadlines are on your sheet that they handed out on Wednesday,
That's Monday,
last week.
next Monday. Okay.
So, because they only want to do one more revision, and they want all the comments at one time.
One thing in their program they have is something about, something that includes parks that are within 3 miles. And they got Marthasville posted as being 3 miles away. It's 7 miles away.
Yeah, I'll write that down.
I don't know if that makes any difference.
Maybe they were going crow's fly.
Go straight, right?
Well, I think they're fixing, they're screwed up, or next up with Dutzel. Dutzel's
Oh, yeah, it could be, yeah.
3 miles away.
And the only other thing I had that wasn't in there, that I really want in there, that was not clarified, and they're working on it, I was emailing them and talking to them last night about it, is the staffing. It's not very clear in there, it's not what I wanted, not that I'm telling them what to put in there, but it wasn't, I asked them to figure it a certain way based on park acreage, and they based it on population. You can do both of them, I don't care, but I want the park acreage, the amount of parkland we have to maintain, and show how many staff we need for that. And that was not in there, and so they're working on clarifying that, and once I get that, I'll send it to you all.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Second?
Motion was by Bob, and second by Gavin.
fine.
In favor?
Aye.
See you next month, and get things to Wayne.
Yep. Have a good one.
You too, Dave.
We're going outdoors soon.
I don't know, I haven't thought about that yet.
I know if we try it in May, it'll be raining its ass off.
Right.
anyway.